So welcome back. Hope you had a good weekend, and that you guys have all arrived safely from the first rain of the season. Anyway, good that we have a little bit of rain finally. So today we're going to continue with exercise 122, where we're going to draw at least one elevation of the building, hopefully all four elevations of the building. And so I've drawn up a floor plan that loosely meets the specs of what you're required to do for this Yosemite Valley cabin. This design is something I just kind of came up with, nothing particularly exotic. I don't even know for sure how the elevations are going to come together, but we're going to look at it as we go forward, as I continue with this design process. So anyway, I do have a kitchen, I have a living space, I have a bathroom, I have 2 bedrooms, and I have a little outdoor courtyard thing that's there. And so I'm going to play around with this, at least for the time being, in creating this phase, this assignment 105 phase. And today we're going to talk about a couple things. One, we need to draw the elevation, but in order to do that, we want to use some guidelines or rays that will show up on a layer that's a non-printing layer. And so we're going to talk first a little bit more in depth about the layer properties and what's showing in the variety of layers and the options that are available. So under the home ribbon that's up here at the top, I have a section that's called layers. And we talked a little bit about this before, but I want to spend a little bit more time. Right here, there's a menu. It's a drop-down menu. And whatever's showing here, assuming that I have no command active, whatever is showing here is whatever the current layer is, which means that if I were to draw a line right now, that line would show up on the Windows layer. Okay? If I want to change whatever the default, the current drawing layer is, if I click on this, I can see all the rest of my layers that are available to me. So for example, if I was going to draw the kitchen, I would click on kitchen, and I would now be in the kitchen layer. And if I were to draw a line like that, that line would then be on the kitchen layer. Okay? If I select an object so that it's selected, it's highlighted in blue there, the layer that displays up here is not the current layer anymore. It's whatever the layer is that the object is on. Right? So if I instead, which we know this is on the kitchen layer, if I came over here and I picked one of these wall layers, oops, the walls layer would show up. Okay, so it changes when you have an object selected or when you don't have an object selected. So one more time, if no object selected, the layer that's showing here is the current layer, the drawing layer. That's what you're going to be doing the drawing on. If you select an object, the layer that shows up here is the layer that the object is on. Okay? So if I had an object, let's say this table and chairs, and I wanted to put that, say, on the furniture layer, I would select the object, which I just did. It's highlighted in blue. And right now it's on layer 0. I'm going to change it to be on a layer called Fern for furniture. And now, if I were to select that object, you'll see that it shows up as Fern, okay, for furniture. So I've just changed the layer that the object is on. Okay? If I selected the objects, let's say we know these are on furniture, but I came down here and I selected part of the kitchen. See how nothing is displayed there? It means that the objects that I've selected are not all on the same layer. Right? So some objects are on the furniture layer, some objects are on the kitchen layer. Okay? It gives me a blank layer there. Okay? All right. So that little shortcut is allowing us to change the object layer, and it's also allowing us to change whatever the current layer is, the one that I'm drawing on. Okay? If I want to go a little bit more in depth from that, I'm going to click on the large button that says Layer Properties. And when I click on Layer Properties, this will open up a Layer Properties Manager window. Okay? And we talked a little bit about this before, but I want to go into a little bit more depth. So on the left-hand column here, I have something called filters. And what filters do is it allows me, let's say I had 200 layers on a drawing. This will allow me to create basically groups of layers. So it might be the first floor layers, and it might be the second floor layers, and it might be the third floor layers or something. So it's built for really complex drawings as a way of kind of grouping selections of layers together. Okay? For the most part, you're going to leave it on all. I've changed it to be on this group filter 1 so that I have a smaller list of layers that don't include the blocks, so that it's a little bit cleaner when I go through and I explain things to you. I don't have so many layers. But you guys can safely leave it on all. That's fine. Okay? In the second set of information that's over here, I have a first column that says which layer is the current layer. Okay, so you see the one with the green check on it? That's the current layer. That's the one, if I were to draw, it would show up on that layer. Okay? If I want to change the current layer, from here, I can double-click. Let's say I wanted to be on topography. I can double-click, and the green check mark moves. Right? So I'm going to go back to the walls layer or the windows layer and leave that. Okay? Under name, we have the name of whatever the layer is. As I said before, there are conventions for how you're supposed to name layers that are consistent. For this class, we're just naming the layers whatever we want. It's beyond the scope. You just name it whatever sounds good. So first floor, second floor, walls, furniture, whatever. Okay? Next to that, we have something called on, which turns a layer on and off for the entire drawing. And then next to that, we have something that's called freeze, right, which freezes or thaws the layer for the entire drawing. There is a very subtle difference between on and off and freeze. It's beyond the scope of this class, but it has to do with what happens when the objects are off and whether you can still snap to them or not. For what we're doing, we're going to concentrate just on the freeze thaw. Right? That's the holistic approach. So if I were to freeze or thaw a layer, let's say I did the walls here, and I were to click on the little sun, it would turn to a snowflake, the walls would disappear, and I can't accidentally select them. They're just gone. Okay? I can thaw the layer and turn them back on. This on-off versus freeze-thaw kind of goes back to the world of AutoCAD Release 12 in about 1998 or something like that, 1997, when computers were really slow and you had to have different methods of working with your drawing. Now everything's so fast it kind of doesn't make any difference anymore. Okay, so we're going to use freeze and thaw. Next to that, we have the lock and unlock icons. And what locking does is, for example, I could select topography here. I could lock the topography layer. And that means on the drawing, if I were to select it, I can still select it. But when I press the delete key, for example, it doesn't go away. Okay, so it exists as an object, but I can't accidentally do anything to that particular object. There it is. Once again, press the delete key, it doesn't go away. Okay? So it enables me to see the object, snap to it, work with it, but not actually change it or delete it. Okay? So that can be very, very useful. So I'm going to go ahead and unlock it for now. Under color, I have a variety of options, and this changes the color for the whole layer. Okay? So if, for example, I wanted the walls to be a different color, I could click on the color, and I could change the walls to be red, and then the walls would show up red everywhere. Okay? Which may or may not be desirable depending on how you're drawing. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and change them back to white for now. Notice there is a difference between this white, or this color that looks kind of like white, color 255, and the index color of 7, which is in fact white. Okay? Pick this one instead of one of these down here. Okay? Pick this one. And I'll go ahead and say OK. If it is that color, when you go to print, it will flip to black. Right? And you'll see this happen when we get into Paperspace next class, and we talk a little bit more in depth about it. Okay? As we continue over from color, we have something called line type. Notice they're all continuous right now, which basically means it's a standard line. Some of you asked me last class about changing the line type to be the hidden line, and we're going to get to that. But this is one way where you could change it if you wanted it to be on a whole layer, all the lines being a certain type. Generally, you leave this at continuous. Next, we come over to line weight. This is the thickness of the line. You see that I have some thicknesses that have been assigned. The walls, for example, have been assigned a 0.40 in thickness, which we can actually see on the screen here. The line types below about 0.25, 0.20 really don't show up on the screen. They'll show up when you print, but not on the screen. So it's a little unfortunate that it works that way, but it is what it is. Okay? When we change the line weight of a layer, all the lines that are on that layer will be that line thickness. Okay? The alternative to that is to pick the lines individually and assign them a line weight individually, which is also an option. Next column is something called transparency. If we wanted something to be semi-transparent, this is relatively new in AutoCAD. They didn't do this for a long time. You can change that value. Right? We're going to skip over this to the printer icon, which is kind of the next most important thing. This controls whether when you go to print, your layer shows up or not. And so you notice that they're all turned on for right now. But I want to create a new layer before we get too far along here that is called guides, and it's not going to print. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the new layer icon, which is this little stack of papers with a star next to it. And it's going to say layer 1, and I'm going to call this guides. Okay, there it is. And I'm going to click on this little printer icon, and you see how it gets a little red circle next to it? It's hard to see it on the projector screen, but that means that when I go to print, this will not show up, which is this is the idea. Okay, so I'm also going to make this the current layer, and I'm going to change the color of this layer to be red. Okay? You can pick any color you want. I'm going to pick red. Okay, so I have guides as being current. It's red. Let's go ahead and make the thickness at 0.00, so it's a thin line. It's just a guideline anyway. And it's not a printing layer. So now I'm done with the layers for now. So I'll go ahead and close the Layer Property Manager. And once again, I have no command selected, and Guides is my current layer. So anything I draw is not going to print, and it's going to be on the Guides layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw, we can get rid of this. I'm going to draw this elevation, which is the south elevation. Right? We have it placed on the site. That's the south elevation, and I'm going to draw that. I'm going to do this in the conventional drawing way. Okay? We have a tendency now to jump straight into 3D, right, where we build it 3D and then we take the elevation from the 3D view. We're going to go back in time a bit and draw this as if it were a drafting table, where we're going to draw this and work with the relationships of this, which is actually still how I draw a lot of AutoCAD stuff. So it's worth going through this and kind of explaining how it goes together. So I'm going to draw the elevation, the south elevation, right down here. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to establish some guides that pull down from these corners. And so I'm going to type ray, or it's under draw ray. Okay, and what a ray does is it starts at a given point. So let me start at this point, and it draws an infinite line in one direction. So I have ortho on, and I'm going to draw a line straight down there. And I'll hit enter to finish. And you can see that as I zoom out, that line just goes off into infinity. Okay, so it's a really good construction line. And I'm going to repeat the ray command. So again, I'm going to type ray. And we're going to go down from here. Like that. And then we'll repeat ray. And we'll go down there. And we'll repeat the ray. And we'll go down here. Okay, so I basically identified the corners of the building for myself. Now I'm going to use the polyline tool, and somewhere down here in space, it doesn't matter where, I'm going to go ahead and draw a line that goes across those lines that I pulled down. Okay, it's arbitrary, it doesn't matter. It could be a specific distance, but it doesn't have to be. Now I'm going to jump back to the layer properties, and I'm going to create a layer that's called south elevation. So there's a layer called south elevation. And I have a command active, I think. You can close this and open it back up again. There it is. I'm going to double click on south elevation to make it active. I'm going to change the color to be white, which is an index color of 7. Go ahead and say OK. And then here under printing, I do want it to print, so I'm going to make sure that it's printable. Okay? So now south elevation is showing. And now I'm going to go ahead and start to draw my building. Okay? So I'll use the line or the polyline tool, and I'm going to draw over these existing lines. So let's say that this side of the building, we'll do it at 16 feet. It's going to be high ceilings. We'll go across. Right? We'll come down maybe 4 feet. There. We'll come across. And let's go up another 2 feet. Across and back down. There. Basically what I'm doing is I'm creating the profile of this building. right, from this back elevation. If I had a sloping roof, I'd be thinking about what the sloping roof is going to look like. This particular building, for right now, I'm going to draw it with a flat roof, but I could just as easily do it with a sloping roof. Okay? So now I need to pull down some other information. And so if I look here on this end, okay, I have concrete walls that extend past my recessed windows, and I have a series of windows. So I'm going to draw that right down here. So let me go ahead and use the ray command again, but I want to switch my layer to be on the guides layer, okay, which it is now. I'll type ray, and I'll draw another line that goes down here. I'll draw another line that goes down here. And then I need some lines that represent the divisions of these windows. Something like that. So I'm using all of these as guides to pull down information. Okay? So let me switch back to my south elevation layer. And I'm going to go back to my polyline tool. And I'm going to go up a bit here. We'll say 2 feet. And we'll draw a line across. I'm going to go back to polyline. And I want to go down by a foot for the roof here. And we'll draw across. Over. Okay. I'm identifying where that window is going to be. So if, for example, I were to turn off or freeze the guides layer, we can start to see that I'm drawing this elevation. Okay? So we'll go ahead and turn that back on, and I'll continue drawing. All right, let me go ahead and draw these in. So instead of continuing to draw, I could also select these and then copy them so that they go to each place here. Okay. Now, one of the things I haven't done is I haven't identified any of the thicknesses of these lines. So let me go back to the layer properties and change the south elevation to have some thickness. We'll do it at 0.3 for right now. So we see that. But I want these smaller lines because they're the frames of the window, or they're the walls here. I'm going to select them and make them thinner. So we'll drop the thickness down here to, let's go maybe 0.18, something like that. And then I also need a line that continues straight down here. And I need a line that goes across the bottom here. Something like that. Okay, so if I were to turn off my elevation, we can start to see that I'm drawing it out. Okay? I need a little bit more information still, so let me turn on those guides. There. I have those divisions, but I don't have, right, the little frames that go around the windows. So I'll do this again with ray. Oh, let me change my layer to be the guides layer. And I'll type ray. And we'll pull these down. These are the little subframes of the windows. All right. And so we'll draw a line that goes here. Oops, I need to switch my layer. Sorry about that. South elevation. Thought I did a... Sorry, there was a piece of wall that I forgot. Go back to guides. And then ray. I need one right there. All right. Go ahead with a line, and I need to draw 2 lines here. We'll go there. There. Unfortunately, these, I forgot to change my layer first, so I'm going to go through and I'm going to select them. and I'm going to change these to be on the south elevation layer, and I'm also going to change them to be very thin. So we'll go 0.00, and then I have to do a little bit more work to divide up these windows, because windows in reality would be divided up a bit, so we'll go up maybe 4 feet. Oops, and I need to change my layer here. I'm going to use offset with 2 inches, draw in a few frames here. This needs to be on the south elevation layer. We'll make these guys at 0.00. And I need a frame at the bottom, so we'll go up. And I need a frame at the top. Go down by 2 inches. All right, let's make these. You can go ahead and turn off the guides for a second here. So we'll freeze those. Take this and that, and we'll make those at 0.00. And you know what? I'm going to turn off the topography layer as well, so that we don't have that line going through it, and you can start to see. So you can see that I'm drawing up the elevation. So this is a wall of windows. I can do a few trims here. So let me go trim. And I want to get rid of these little tails. All right. Now the good news is these are all the same, so we can take these windows and really easily copy them. Oops. Else if I select them all, sorry about that. And I'm going to copy from here, and we're going to go across to each of those places. So now you can see that I've drawn up those little set of windows. Okay, I would continue. Let me continue on with my guides here to draw the rest. Right, so I have another little set of windows here, so I'd have to draw those in place, which I will do. And then I also have a series of windows above the little sink, and I would draw those into place as well. Okay, I'm not going to make you sit and watch me draw it all, but I'll draw it so that the next class you'll see what is done. Now, there also comes a point in time where I need to draw the other elevations. Okay, and so we have 2 different strategies for doing this, and it depends on your comfort level and kind of how your brain works in terms of can you draw it upside down, right? I can draw it no matter which direction I'm drawing it. It makes no difference. I can draw the elevation upside down. My brain works like that, but I have a lot more practice than you. So if I were to do this, right, let's say I want to draw this side elevation right here, which would be the east elevation. Thank you. So let me go ahead and turn on my guides. And once again, I'll do ray. And I would go in that direction. And I would go in that direction. Right? What I need now is I need a 45-degree reflecting line that goes down in this direction so that I can pull elevation lines across and then back up. And do you guys remember this in 130? Vaguely? You know the one where you have the lines that are in space, right? This is what we're doing. It's the same thing, but this is a more practical application. So I'm going to use ray again. And this time, I'm going to specify a start point as being on this corner, right? But I want to specify an angle. So I'm going to hit tab. And you see that instead of, and I'm going to point on the screen here, instead of specifying a point through, I moved my cursor over into this section. And I'm going to specify an angle of -45, right? And then I'll press tab again. And you can see that it locks me in to It's supposed to lock me in. Let me turn off ortho for a second here. It locks me into a line that's at 45 degrees, or a ray that's at 45 degrees. So I'll go ahead and click to establish that 45-degree line. And now, right, I can continue with rays, and I can pull lines. Let me turn back on ortho here to that 45 degree and back up that direction. Same thing here where we can repeat at the top and go up this way. Okay, and so now what I've done is I've established, right, this building in this view. And so I can go ahead and, with my polyline, we'll go ahead and draw a few things here. Let me switch to a new layer, and we'll call this east elevation. Make that the current layer. Close this. Polyline. We'll go ahead and start drawing. There. There. Now in this view, I'm also going to see this building. So we're going to go, or that wing of the building. So I'm going to go back to my guides layer, and I'll type ray. And I'll pull that to the 45. And I'll repeat the ray going up in this direction. Right? Now I need to correspond to where the walls are on this side, so it would be that point and that point. So I'll go ray there, and ray there. And if I were to draw the polyline, this would go from here up to there, over to there, and back down to there. Now this should have been on the east elevation layer. Right? And so you can see that I'm starting to draw what this would look like. Right? And in reality, I probably need some hidden lines to make this elevation a little bit more exciting. I have no windows on this wall right now. So I either need some windows or I need to do something to this elevation because it's really not very exciting. Now, if I'm going to do the elevation on the opposite side, right, over here, okay, I need to do the same 45-degree line, but I can't do it from this corner because it's not going to match up correctly. I need to do it from what would be a bounding box of this building, right, so that I'm consistent. So I need to do it from a line that goes from here, right, over to here. So it's going to be from about right there. So easy way of doing this would be to use the rectangle tool. Again, I'm on the guides layer. And I'll go from this corner. And the rectangle that I draw has to include everything on the building. So I'll pull from here, and I'll pull from there to where those two meet. And now I have a rectangle that goes around the building completely. You guys see how the building's completely contained? Okay. Now I'll do my ray from right here. And this time it's not going to be, let me turn off ortho. There. It's not going to be negative 45, which was here. It's going to be negative 45 plus 90 degrees to get me there. So it's going to be negative 135. Oops. Helps if I do it in the correct box here. All right. Tab negative 135, which gets me to right there. Now, I like to do it, so horizontal to the right is 0, right? Positive goes up, negative goes down, right? So instead of calculating out whatever it would be, 200 and something, right, to go all the way around, it's easier to do negative numbers for me, so that's why I do it negative. So now I have the ray going down at 45 on that side. Okay, so I can pull the lines up the same way. Now, if you're having trouble visualizing how this works, right, which some of you, it's not a problem, some of you will experience that, I can instead, with all the layers on, right, select my object, and I don't have the topography on. Let me turn that back on. I can select everything, so I can Control A to select everything, and I can rotate from this point right here. Let me turn on ortho. And I can rotate it or flip it up so that now I'm drawing straight down. Because most people can draw right side up. Okay, so I just rotated the whole view so that I can draw this elevation in its normal context. Okay? And I would continue rotating my way around until I got all the way back to where north was up. Okay? It doesn't matter whether you do it this way or you do it a different way. It's essentially all the same thing. It's just a matter of which way works for you. So I would, once again, I'd go ray, and we'd pull some lines down from each of these corners. There. Pull that down. Pull this across. Right? We need the top of this taller section, so we'll go here. Oops. Sorry about that. There. We'll go across like that. And then I'll go to my west elevation layer I have to create. I'll call this west elevation. Make that the active layer. And I can go ahead and I can draw this part of the building here. Right? So now this one has a few lines going back. So we have this one here that I have to draw. So once again, I can go to ray. Oh, let me switch my layers to guides. If at some point along the process you feel like you have too many guides, you can delete them, right? Or you can create a guides 2 layer, right, in a different color. It's just a matter of what comfort works for you. So I've done it from there. And let me go ahead and do ray again from this edge. All right, now this building isn't as tall, so I have to bring the height down. So I'll bring that down, and I'll bring this across. Like that, and now I can do the polyline on my west elevation. Right? And so you can see I'm starting to draw up what that would look like. Again, I'm not drawing the windows, but I'm just trying to show you the general process here. Okay? Looks like I have a little wall that sticks out there. I need to pull that line down. Let me go ahead and go ray. Pull that line down as well. And that would be the full height of this section. Oops, let me switch to my west elevation. There. And it would be in front of that section. So I'm going to need to use this to trim that. Okay? And then this has a little bit of a, because it's on an angle there, it would have a little bit of a, I'd see into that a little bit. I'll do that as a separate little operation. So the goal today is to finish up your floor plan if it's not done already, right? And then to draw at least the south elevation and hopefully move on to the other elevations. Okay? The more that you do, the better and well prepared you will be for assignment 105, right? So I'm giving you lots of time in class to do this. Next class we'll talk about how do you actually make like a piece of paper with these objects laid out in it. Okay? So the more elevations you have ready, the easier it'll be to do next class. Right? So try to get done with the elevations today if you can. If not, try to finish them before next class, and that'll help you a great deal. Okay? If you're going to do a traditional building with a pitched roof, that's fine. You would draw it very much the same way, where you're pulling lines from where the roof would be, right, and connecting it together. If I have time, I'll do this same building with a pitched roof, and you can see what that would look like as well. All right? Are there any questions? No? Okay, then I'll turn you loose.